Vietnam freezing bank accounts if you don't scan your proper body parts, gold exploding upwards in price, markets on edge. What happens next? I've decided to bring on an expert here with me, Bill Armour, one of the directors of Genesis Gold Group with 8 years of military intelligence. Bill, welcome to the show. We got a lot of stuff happening today, don't we?
We absolutely do. This has been quite a crazy week so far.
Yeah, we got federal Federal Reserve cutting interest rates. We got gold responding. We got markets responding. Not exactly what we would have expected, especially with what's going on in the world. But I just wanted to pick your brain about some of these big news items. And I think the biggest thing that people are really concerned about is the digital bank, the digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, with the control that comes with that. And this rollout that's happening in Vietnam. We saw bank closures. We saw frozen accounts sparking panic over there. And it's all linked to whether you're going to turn in your personal biometric information. So could you weigh in a little bit on Vietnam and how that what could happen elsewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned there, military intelligence experience. So I'm still quite plugged in, even though I've been out. So I talk to a lot of friends that are in, both currently and retired, colonels, full birds, as well as generals. So, people really in the know on this. And one of the things that they seem to think, and that I tend to believe, is that this is not the last time we're going to see this. As countries move more and more towards a digital way of operating here, there is at some point they have to quote unquote cash in on that. And the way that they do that is they want to force people into these transitions. Now, when this happens almost overnight, as it did with these people in Vietnam, the ones that were unprepared were left with a choice, and that is submit to authority in this way, or don't and lose their life savings, everything they've got in banks and whatnot. So when I see something like that, I think that the powers to be and a lot of these really insidious people out there use that and say, wow, that worked really well. We got over 60% of the population to agree to that. And I look back at what happened with COVID, and again, same thing. Wow, people really submit. A lot of people submitted that. A lot of people didn't, obviously, myself included, but a lot of people did. And I think that it sets the benchmark for what could happen. And just a couple examples, I even think of, the Canada truckers, their bank accounts were frozen. I think of Greece, Cyprus, back during in 2013, where there was a bail-in and accounts were frozen, stopped, deleted, et cetera, then as well. So this is happening. It's just never happened because of biometrics before. And that's what makes this so unique and so scary.
Yeah, 80 million bank accounts frozen in Vietnam just the last few days. And then we had 3 million bank accounts frozen in Thailand, just over the border too. So they don't actually touch, but in the same kind of area, it just really just feels like a dry run, practice run for these central bank digital currencies. And President Trump said that will not happen on his watch, but the previous administration was just ramming it right on through.
Right. You're exactly right. And I tend to think, other, the powers to be, the sort of the banking cabal that exists out there, they're not so in 2 years, 3 years, they can wait. They're patient. And so when they see this happening here, they're still executing plans with the assumption that maybe they can rig an election here in a couple of years and that they'll get away with things. They're not done. You back an animal into a corner, and what does it do? Eventually it bites. And so that's where I see this is, they're beginning to understand what are the limits of what they can push in this world. And so this, again, a dry run is a great way to say that, with the understanding that, again, President Trump doing everything he can to prevent things like this. But the war is not over. And so this absolutely could occur. I think of the people, though, obviously here at Genesis Gold, this is one of the things that's on my mind, is the people that managed to get some of their savings into metals beforehand. And so that when the government offered them this choice of submit or resist, they said, I'm going to resist because my life savings isn't stuck in a digital currency, isn't stuck in a bank, et cetera. And so they were not forced to comply with that. And so many people in America think, well, that could never happen here. And newsflash, these kind of things have happened throughout all great civilizations in time. Rome fell, all of these huge civilizations we read about in history books. I'm sure at that time they thought, well, it could never happen here, but it did. And so we need to be so prepared and so aware of what's going on in the world so we're not caught with our pants down.
Yeah, you cannot be free of a system that you're dependent on. And that's the thing. How much like could you just close your door, your front door, or could you just lock your gate out in front of your house and just stay there for weeks, for months and not go anywhere? Could you do that? If you can't, think of all those touch points, because we got that shock during the COVID period. You realize that that these stores are like, hey, guess what? In order to come in here and buy food, you need to do X, Y, Z. You need to line up with your face covered. You need to distance yourself, and you need to beg for the privilege of buying food. And I think that a lot of us who are prepared, I went once or something like that, and I saw the pictures and everything like that. I got so stressed by that. I was just there like, I'm not going to the store. Like, I'm not doing that. And I had enough food stocked up that I didn't have to, which was a huge benefit. But imagine when it's your bank, when you're going to have to queue up in line, like countless people have had to do around the world. Mm-hmm. I got caught up when they did the dry run in India years back, and people were hat in hand standing in line at their bank all day long, waiting to just pull out their money from their bank account. And if you don't think that can happen here, you got another thing coming. I mean, we got so many branches of banks closing down, right? So really, when it comes down to it, one of the best ways of circumventing the banking system is cryptocurrency. I get that. But one of the more stable ways of doing it is precious metals, gold and silver. This is the ultimate off-grid anonymous payment system that has been developed thousands and thousands of years ago. So precious metals, we got gold over $3,700. Silver just pushed into $45. What's going on behind this surge? Could you just kind of walk us through some of that, why this is happening?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple big pieces. One, just in the last few days, obviously, is the Vietnam bank closure, as we just touched on. A lot of people that we've seen a huge spike in buying just from normal everyday people. That you've seen gold and silver go up about 5% and 6% respectively just in the last 3-4 days, because people are realizing that's why they're continuing to buy it. They say, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. This is a possibility. So that's one piece there. Another is there's a canary in the coal mine, and that is looking around at these job numbers that have come out. And we can touch more on that. But frankly, it's becoming more and more relevant that this last administration has pushed us into a recession. So it's been kind of hidden here. We were losing jobs for a long time. That was being falsely reported that we were gaining jobs, that things were just fine and humming along. But all of a sudden, we're seeing these numbers revised back and realizing, oh my gosh, people can't get a job and they can't keep a job. And when they lose a job, they can't get a new job. I was just speaking with someone here. They've been in tech for a long time, and they said if you have a job, you better keep it because you can't get a new one because companies aren't hiring. So canary in a coal mine. These things, companies at least believe that we're in for a recession. So they're tightening their belts. They say we don't want to hire new people. We don't want to grow our business because they're expecting a severe shock to the market here. The other thing is the dollar is getting much weaker. Since summer, we've seen the power of your dollar has shrunk about 7%. So that dollar you use, imagine cut off about a tenth of it, a little less than a tenth of that dollar, and that's what it's worth. So your dollar is losing value, and it's losing value fast. You look at the stock market. Stock market hasn't even caught up with that, with the destruction of the dollar lately. Gold's up 45%, silver just about as much. So gold and silver is not just surviving, it's thriving at this time. So that's one of the strongest ways you can protect yourself. Another big piece that people are talking about on what's going on is the amount of gold and silver that central banks are buying. China now has almost 10% of the world's gold reserves. And I believe that number is, obviously, that's what the CCP is reporting. They're not going to tell the world exactly how much they have. I'm sure that number is much, much higher. When you pair that with what Russia has, you have 2 Brics countries alone that control almost a quarter of all the gold in the world. And they're not giving that, they're not selling that. They're going to hold on to that. And they want to use that for the Brics currency, et cetera, beyond down the road, excuse me. So when you have that in mind, you realize the amount of gold that you personally could actually buy, any given person, is shrinking substantially. And at some point, because I'm not selling my gold right now. There's no chance. I'm not giving my gold away. So if you can't get mine, I'm sure a lot of other patriots feel the same way. At what point do we get, and people are looking around and say, okay, I'd like to buy gold. It's $3,750 today, and no one's willing to sell it. And suddenly, okay, well, how about 3,800? No, 3,900. And you reach this point where everyone has gold and no one wants to get rid of it. And that's where you can see these really astronomical numbers here, these rises in gold and silver that would be of biblical proportion. So you start to look at all of this together, and it paints a very interesting picture of where we find ourselves.
Yeah, we see a lot of these commercial banks on the wrong side of these things too. They're promising to deliver silver. They're promising to deliver gold that they don't have. And these aren't small amounts of numbers either. They're promising to deliver massive amounts of gold, massive amounts of silver. You got all these promises of silver. Silver's the worst, really. We have many billions of dollars of silver that's promised that could never, ever be delivered. And they're using this to siphon off demand from physical metal. I'm sorry, friends. Silver isn't a promise. Silver is something that you can hold. You can hold a prepper bar. You can hold American Eagle. You cannot hold a promise of silver. And we got all these banks like that. And one of these days, they're going to realize that they can't buy that silver on the open market and deliver it to the people they promised to deliver it to. There's going to be defaults on this. And I think that's going to cause a massive spike when that happens too. So we got that happening. We got countries on the wrong side of this. We got Canada. I mean, they don't even have any gold reserves. They have zero gold reserves, which is just, I mean, when you think about that, it's just like, that doesn't even make sense. What are they backing up their Canadian dollar with? Nothing. And don't get us started on what's happening at Fort Knox, right? Who knows what's in there? Nobody knows. We got promised an audit, but we didn't get one. So with all that, what do you think about where gold and silver go from here? Like, I don't want to put you on the spot, but what are your thoughts? What's your prediction? We're not going to hold you to it, but your gut reaction of where you think these prices are really going to go?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just want to real quick restate, you're so on the money there when you talk about the silver and not being able, at some point they look around and that's a house of cards, right? As soon as they realize that can't happen, we're going to see they're underwater. They don't have the silver. They don't, and frankly, a lot of places don't have gold too. They're offering paper gold. And it's built on this lie that they think no one will call their bluff. But at some point, when things start getting hairy and people do call their bluff and they want their money, they want their silver and gold, their real honest money, and they can't provide that, well, you're going to see, things are going to change dramatically. So, but to answer your question, I want to answer one other question. That is, what's coming? So we've talked about the amount of gold and silver shrinking that's available, that, people are going to start having a harder and harder time getting their hands on that. You've got coming next year, Trump's executive order where he talks about the availability of, now this is paper gold and silver, but still it plays a little bit of a role here. Owning gold and silver in 401ks, that's $12 trillion of new money that can go into gold and silver. With the amount of gold and silver that's available right now, which is shrinking, make no mistake, it is shrinking. All of a sudden, you put that much buying demand, because there's a lot of people, I know a lot of patriots who say, I would love to own gold and silver. My company just won't let me, this and that. All of a sudden, you give them the option to own gold and silver, and you've got this incredible buying pressure on gold. And you start to see it's almost like a squeeze. They don't have the demand there, and people want to buy, but the gold and silver is not there. No one's selling it. And so you could see prices rocket up there. But in terms of predictions, and obviously no one has a crystal ball, I certainly don't pretend to, but when you look at all of the numbers I'm seeing and all of the data that I'm pouring to, I just look at, what would gold cost if we adjusted it for the amount of inflation? Because people say, well, gold's probably overvalued right now. It's 3,750. No, if it were just adjusted for the inflation, you would see gold at 4,500, 5,000. It has been pushed down by the establishment for so long. We're just starting to see it catch back up. So to say nothing of the short supply and people trying to get their hands on it, just alone to come back in line with really how bad this inflation has been, the money the cash that's been created, you're going to see gold at 4,500, 5,000. So that's 20 or 30% away just to get there. Then from there, you start talking about, okay, well, then we get into supply and demand. And that's where you can see, far beyond that. So I tell people here, a very conservative, this is assuming none of the bombs drop, so to speak, or any of the things really go wrong, but a very conservative estimate, you could put it at 4,500 to 5,000 within the next 12 months, silver $70 to $90. And we talk about a 3-year return, you're looking at 6,500 all the way up to $8,000 on gold, $125, $150. And people say, that's so high, Bill. I mean, how could it possibly get there? But I remind people here, we were talking about gold at $300, $400, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's not high. It's actually, very, very conservative. And we're going to see this continue to go up. I speak nothing of gold and silver and the ratios there. Lots I could say. That's just a little bit of a tidbit, but so much wind at the back for gold and silver, certainly.
Yeah, I know you guys over there at Genesis Gold are not get rich quick scheme kind of people. You guys aren't, you're not trying to counsel people like get invested and you'll get rich. It's protecting your wealth. Now, it may go up more than protecting you. And the stage is set for that. But really when it comes down to it is several years ago, I bought this tube of Apmex rounds, and it's been sitting here and I've been playing with it and flashing it at the camera for a couple of years now. But the thing is, I own this. And you know what? Until I sell it, it still is what it is. It doesn't change. The government doesn't take a piece of it every year. The Chinese doing something with their markets doesn't change this. I still have this. Whereas if you have stock, your stock value changes whether they issue more stock. Your dollar value changes whether they pump a bunch of trillions of dollars into the market. And it's like, imagine owning something that changes value and changes what it is based on what other people do. You'd have to say unequivocally, you don't actually own that. I mean, that's like a house that you have to pay real estate taxes on. You don't actually own it. You're renting it from the government. And that's the truth. It's an uncomfortable truth, but it's the truth. So, I mean, how do we get out of this? We're in a mess. Could you walk me through some practical steps that this audience, the average person watching this right now, what steps can they do to protect themselves from the chaos that's around them and kind of what's coming?
Certainly. And just a real quick one-off from what you said there. And that is what you're describing really is unequal weights and measures. Biblical principle. It's one of the principles here that the Genesis was founded on, that God hates unequal scales and measures. And you look at your fiat money, really what they're doing when they print this extra money, the Fed creates money out of thin air, is they are stealing from you. And with gold, you're exactly right. You own it versus the Fed that can devalue your money overnight. You've done nothing wrong. You have lost money you've been stolen from through no fault of your own. And so that's really a fundamental truth of gold and silver. It's why it's referenced in Genesis 2, which is, that God calls gold good. I mean, that's where we get the name Genesis from as a company. So right on there, completely agree. In terms of practical steps, the first thing would be obviously get yourself some physical gold and silver to have at the home. I always recommend that every single person have some. It's going to be an immediately useful device here to transact, to use as money when prepper bars are a great example of that. They come in multiple denominations. They're barterable. As silver goes up dramatically, you're looking at, you're not going to want maybe those 1 ounce silver pieces because silver goes to $150. You just want, maybe you don't want to give someone $150 for a loaf of bread. So having obviously the tiered denominations is very, very helpful. But you've got many, many different options on that, gold, silver. So get yourself some gold and silver. Obviously, we're happy to help people. Anyone coming from your channel, Steve, we're more than welcome to assist. You can reach out to us at 1-800-200-GOLD. That comes directly to us. Mention you came from Steve. And then obviously on the other side, if you're saying, well, Bill, most of my money is not in a checking account or a savings account. It's in an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, many other examples of that. What can I do? Because I don't want my money sitting in the market when we go through all this turbulence. I want it protected. I want it to be mine. Well, we can actually help with that. Little known fact, you can actually move retirement funds into precious metals, physical precious metals too. And I want to clarify, because I had a lady that called me the other day and she said, Bill, I just, I saw you the other day on a channel and I really appreciate everything you had to say. I've already got gold, but I just wanted your opinion on it. And we looked through it and it turns out she thought she had physical gold, but really what she had was a paper promise. And, she was floored by this. She said, no, they told me that they said this was physical gold. I'm sure of it. But when she actually looked through the form, the papers that they had given her, they said she had redeemable certificates that as long as they had the metals on hand, she could get. She didn't have physical gold and silver. So she was floored by that. She's asked me to tell everyone I talked to that because it just was news to her. So I always remind people of that. If you reach out, it can be a very, crazy thing going on. You don't know the rules and the regulations. That's where Genesis is here to help. We're here to navigate that with you, help you understand what your options are if you can. And if you can, and most people really do have the option. They just need the help there, the assistance to get there. You can transition those IRA, 401k, etc. funds into physical gold. And this is the key part here, with no penalties and no taxes. So that means you don't have to pull it all out and get hit with, the 30, 40% taxes, 20% taxes, whatever it might be, or penalties. You can convert that laterally into physical gold and silver, get yourself protection. And that's what I tell everyone these days, because you can always be early. You can't be late though.
It's like the ark, right? I mean, the flood's coming. Are you on the ark or are you not? And, when Noah got on the ark, he had all the food he needed for his family and for the animals on the ark. And really, you need to get on the ark. You need to get yourself to safety. We talk about stuff like moving out of the cities and that kind of thing. But you also need to make sure you have enough assets with you to weather the storm that's coming. And historically, World War II, many of the atrocities that have happened in other places, just recently in Venezuela, people finding that they can trade precious metals for food and the things that they need, transportation out of the country or out of the disaster zone. Precious metals have been recognized for thousands and thousands of years, and they will be recognized next year. They'll be recognized 100 years from now as holding value. And this can be the difference between life and death for your family, having physical precious metals. And I understand a lot of people have their assets tied up in their homes, the equity, and in their retirement accounts. And you guys can help people tap those retirement accounts to start getting that precious metals into your portfolio and over time into your hands.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts there, but that's where, we're here as Genesis. We've got an incredible team here. Obviously, with the name there, we're all born again Christians that believe very strongly in what we do. We believe in helping people. And I always tell people here, fundamentally, gold is in Genesis. Guess what? It's also at the very end of Revelation too. The Bible talks about it still being used to transact at the very, very end there. So as a biblical principle, it doesn't talk about the dollar being there at the very end, but it does talk about gold. So we know that through this whole process, gold sort of weathers that storm. And I lovingly say it's kind of the firm foundation you build your financial home on. And that's really how you want to approach this.
All right, friends, thanks so much for joining with us. Thank you, Bill, for joining us. And friends, if you want to get some more information from Genesis Gold, check out the pinned comment down below that has their phone number right there. Make sure you mention the Poplar report, because they do waive your setup fee if you mention us. And also they have their website right on there. Some of you guys just want to go over the website and poke around. Again, if you do start talking to them or you do move forward with them, make sure you mention this channel so they do waive that setup fee. It can save you hundreds of dollars for that. So thanks so much, Bill, for being with us. Thanks for giving us your thoughts on some of these things. And I'll see you guys again next time. Adios.
God bless.